I genuinely think people should get divorced. And I genuinely think, here's what I'm saying, that people should get remarried. Like, it's okay to get divorced and say, hey, I made a mistake. And it's also okay to remarry and try a second time. Why do so many people stay in this rut of a marriage? Like, I know a couple of people close to me that have great kids, but their marriage is a rut, but they just whine about it. They whine about the other partner. They go, oh, but he's not doing his part and he sucks as a dad. And, and then they look at me and they go, oh, Lynn, if I had you as my husband, etc., etc. I'm like, and it's so much envy. And I go, that's sad. Because I go, well, first, like, they come to me for advice and then I generally tell them off and ask them what they're not doing and then they get triggered, right? Because it's like, I really don't like people that complain because I'm like, but if you're complaining, you can change it. And there's something that you're not doing in your life that if you change, then it would create that spiral effect and it creates the change in the other person. If you are so generous and you are so loving unconditionally to another person, I guarantee you'll find a way that person will click and flick the switch and they'll actually start to go, wow, I'm gonna reciprocate. Like, we just mirror, right? So what you're giving is what you're getting. Why do you think so many people stay in this rut? And there's this rut. I see so many complaints in the community of men that are coming in and they're just like, Al, you don't understand. My wife's a bitch. If she did this, I want to do all these things. Al, I want to make all these changes, but what about her? What about her? Why doesn't she do this? Is there like high performance women?
It's the dichotomy of life, I think, man. When I look at it, have a look at us at the core level. The dichotomy of life as a human being is we are lazy fucking creatures. And the reason why it's the dichotomy of life is there's a deep, big part of us that's fucking lazy and wants to do the bare minimum. And the equal opposite of that is we're probably the most progressive and evolutionary creatures on this planet. And the reason why I bring that up is it's so much fucking easier. That's what I mean by lazy, Lynn. It's so much fucking easier to point the finger and say, oh, look at all their problems and faults and flaws. That's way easier than taking ownership over your own bullshit and doing work and doing something about it. I think that's probably my first answer, but that always comes down to a choice. So maybe
but what does a guy actually do in that situation where his wife is pretty poor, she's poor form, okay, and he's like, okay, I'm willing to change, and then he's been abused by her and put down by her his whole life, so everything he does is wrong, right? Like, if you're in a situation, everything you do is wrong, you're a loser, you can't produce. They've got 3 kids together. The kids are keeping them together. What do you do in that situation? Like, practically. Okay? The wife doesn't trust him anymore, abuses him, calls him a loser. He's got no self-esteem. He's just listening to her. He's literally working at a job, coming home, and he's in a bad environment. What do you start? Because I think the reality is, like, I can see it here from this perspective, and people listening will go, yeah, but my wife, I wish I had a wife like Kerry who could sit down and be patient and tell me off. My wife just fucking abuses me when I get home. The first thing, she throws shit at me. There's no sex. We haven't had sex for ages. She makes me feel bad for asking. She rejects me all the fucking time. She doesn't respect me. She there's no respect for the husband. And he's carrying a lot of the weight because he's making the money. And every man has different cards. And I'm just interested to go through, like, the multiverse, the million different types of men, and I go, how would I figure it out this way? There's a path to figure it out. Is it hard? Extremely. Can you see in the woods with all the tangled weeds? Absolutely not. But rather than I just want to dive in because I would go, what would I do in that shit show?
That was me in my life, and I was experiencing.
You come home, your wife thinks you're a loser. You got 3 kids. She doesn't respect you. She constantly rejects you when you ask for sex.
It's a hard one to answer because I'm with the perspective where a man probably wouldn't think this way, or a lot of men commonly. But the very first thing I would do would be a triage on myself in asking some deep quality questions. What are the possible reasons that has led to the position that I'm currently in not getting X, Y, and Z from my wife, and this not being true, and then reviewing and analyzing where am I don't like fault and blame, but where am I most responsible or 100% responsible for those outcomes? Is it possible to change them?
What am I not doing?
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. What am I not doing? What don't I see? And what can I do about it? And then I would actually work on myself first. And then, because I think the greatest form of communication, Lynn's example, followed by listening, followed by talking. I think that's probably my top 3. in that order. But that's what I do first, triage to first understand, because then this is the same guy, right, who maybe he does want to change. So he's trying and trying and trying. It's fucking falling on deaf ears.
It's I get it. It's hard because my previous relationship, like I felt like that guy. You know what I mean? So I'd come home. And I think coming down to this, I think it comes down to a lack of courage. Like lack of courage to assess the situation and go, this situation is not the situation that I want to be in. And also with courage, it's actually having the self-respect to acknowledge that I don't want to be in this shitty marriage. And I think when you have the ability to see that and the courage to see that, then you have to take some sort of action, because there can only be two types of outcomes from here. Like outcome number one, yes, you get a marriage that you want, and it's like, fuck, this is the marriage that I want. It's absolutely on fire. I love her. She loves me. We have great sex. We're connected. We have aligned visions. We want to parent this way. She's got her role. I've got my role. Unfortunately, the next thing is divorce. And I think when I think about that, most men that stay in this pit don't want to go get divorced because they can't see the other side. Does that make sense? They're more close to divorce than the version of, fuck, this is going to be, we can be partners. We can be like together. And I think it's sad. It's sad because I genuinely think I genuinely think people should get divorced. And I genuinely think, here's what I'm saying, that people should get remarried. Like, it's okay to get divorced and say, hey, I made a mistake. And it's also okay to remarry and try a second time. Like, find the next, I don't know about being divorced and staying single, because I don't know if I could do that. Because I need a family. Like, that's just part of my need. To be successful in life, I feel like I need to have a really good family, and I need to raise them. It's going to be fun. And this is what I'm working towards, the relationships of the family. Right? But I think a lot of guys, when they think about getting divorced, they think it's failure. Which yes. I don't think that's true.
And also they probably think if we stay under the same house, under the same roof in the same house, it's for the kids. But I guess what I would prompt every man to ask, and maybe even ask one day with his wife when they sit down, is the question: when our kids grow up and move out of this place and find their own home, what's keeping us together? And that's tough, man, because a lot of guys will settle and they'll do that, but then as soon as the kids do leave, they get divorced and they think that's okay, we did the right thing. And the unfortunate part is, because I've got a fair few members who've gone through that, it's not great, because guess what? The backlash from the children who are now adults, who have this seed that was planted, look back and they're like, well, the whole fucking time raising us was a scam. It didn't even exist. All of that was just a sham. It actually wasn't real. You were just together for us. And then they're left empty, which is pretty tough, man, because then they're adults carrying the same baggage now, right?
It's all the same. It all gets copied and pasted into the same DNA, right? Next generation copies and pastes what we do. And so I suppose the other thing is, if you are in a bad relationship, I think the first thing is you got to have the courage to decide, is this what I want? And do you respect yourself enough to actually go get what you want? Like, are you willing to put in the work to go get what you want? If this is not what you want, you got to leave. Okay? You got to make an ultimatum. Hey, we either fix this or I'm leaving, or I'm out. And I think that, rather than staying in the rut, and I think, like we talked about right at the very start, men just don't want to do shit until, like, there's so much pressure on it that they have to do stuff. And I think that's where a lot of men find themselves. Like, quite often, it's the women wanting a divorce, not the man. Right? It's the women going, hey, I'm going to divorce you. The man is just slowly drifting away and he thinks he can hold it all together. And then the woman just comes along. She either cheats on him, or he cheats on her, or he does something, and then she ends up divorcing him. And then when you run into that battle, well, as we talked about it earlier, men aren't left in a very good spot. When that place comes, when the woman fights and wants custody and there's child support, men are not in a very good spot at all when it comes to the divorce.
Very true. And it's tough, man, and it's something where, like you said, that there needs to be a seeking of realignment, and then maybe it isn't the path moving forward, but you've learnt and you're developing yourself to learn for the next one. Or maybe, hey, at least you've tried everything you can. Or on the flip side, we can make this work and we are aligned. We've just lost sight of investing inside of each other, because it's like a cloud, isn't it? Marriage is quite an interesting, fascinating organism where you need to feed it constantly. That's investing in each other and what you've bought into and agreed into, like what you've spoken about every year. You remarry, Kerry, and you need to create alignment, which is actually feeding it the right thing. You don't want to poison your marriage, but you need to feed it so it doesn't starve. That's quite rare, I think, in today's world because everyone's too fucking busy, Lynn. Or they've got alternatives, or they assume things or have expectations without actually seeking to understand.
I just don't think there's a modern way that a family unit could run and should run. I think when we go back to 20, 30 years ago, people go, that's too outdated, it's too traditional. People also are afraid of religious kind of families that run their family unit that way because the religion has a bad stigma around it. And so I think people are missing a blueprint of to how do you build a great family? How do you build a great family? How do you have a wife that adores you? How do you have kids that adore you? How do you actually lead great children? I think that's a blueprint that I'm interested in uncovering. I'm interested in finding that out.